Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding is a humorous and candid look at the life of a single woman in her 30s, navigating the complexities of love, self-esteem, and the pressure to fit societal expectations. Published in 1996, the novel quickly became a cultural phenomenon, giving voice to the struggles and joys of modern womanhood. Written in the form of a personal diary, it offers readers a unique, often hilarious, insight into the life of Bridget Jones, a relatable character who, despite her awkwardness, is charming and endearing. The book resonates with many because it touches on universal themes, most notably the pursuit of romantic love, the challenge of self-acceptance, and the quest for personal fulfillment. At the same time, it presents a witty critique of the superficial standards set by society, especially concerning body image, career success, and relationships. Bridget's internal monologue, often filled with self-deprecating humor, makes her journey feel incredibly authentic, as if we are reading the private thoughts of someone we know and relate to. Helen Fielding's portrayal of Bridget, loosely inspired by Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and the iconic character of Elizabeth Bennet, offers a modern take on the romantic comedy genre. Bridget Jones' Diary captures the essence of an imperfect, yet lovable protagonist navigating the messy terrain of adulthood. The book's appeal lies in its wit, its honest exploration of modern life, and its ability to make us laugh while also reflecting on the personal struggles many of us face. Now, let's delve deeper into the diary of Bridget Jones as she embarks on her often hilarious, sometimes painful, but ultimately heartwarming journey of self-discovery. Bridget Jones, the protagonist of Bridget Jones' Diary, begins her journey as an ordinary 30-something woman trying to juggle the expectations of her family, friends, and society, all while grappling with her own insecurities. Her diary, a candid and unfiltered chronicle of her life, opens with an all-too-familiar resolution to lose weight, quit smoking, drink less, and find true love. The diary format gives us an intimate glimpse into Bridget's world, making her personal struggles feel relatable and universal. At the outset of the novel, Bridget is single and disillusioned, with little hope of finding the perfect partner. She describes herself as overweight, somewhat awkward, and perpetually failing to meet the idealized image of femininity that society often promotes. But it's Bridget's humor and sharp self-awareness that shine through as she writes about her resolutions, highlighting her tendency to fall short of them, which only makes her more endearing. She's not perfect, and that's exactly why she's so relatable. The perfectionist world around her often sets unrealistic standards, and yet, in her candid, unapologetic voice, we see a woman who refuses to conform to the usual ideals. The diary is a space where Bridget can vent her frustrations, express her hopes, and document her daily life in a way that's deeply personal. Her writing is filled with self-criticism, but also an undeniable resilience. She's fully aware of her shortcomings, but it's through this awareness that she begins to confront them. It's through her flaws and her sometimes disastrous attempts at romance and self-improvement that we see the true essence of her character. Someone who is incredibly self-conscious, but also lovable and honest in her pursuit of happiness. One of the recurring themes in Bridget's diary is her relationship with her mother. Bridget's mother, a well-meaning but somewhat overbearing woman, constantly pressures her to meet certain expectations, particularly when it comes to her love life. Throughout the story, her mother's attempts to match make Bridget with various men reflect the societal pressure to be in a relationship and settle down. Bridget's internal struggle between wanting to meet these expectations and her desire for independence is palpable. Yet, she often finds herself caught in awkward or unfulfilling relationships, which are almost always met with disappointment or frustration. Enter the first major romantic interest in Bridget's life, Daniel Cleaver. Daniel is a charming, smooth-talking man who works with Bridget at a publishing company. He seems to be everything Bridget has ever wanted in a man: confident, handsome, and seemingly interested in her. Bridget's infatuation with Daniel grows as they begin a flirtatious, often confusing relationship, and she becomes obsessed with his every move. Daniel's mixed signals and emotional distance leave Bridget feeling constantly unsure of where she stands. Despite his lack of commitment, she remains drawn to him, hoping for the elusive, perfect relationship she has long dreamed of. Bridget's diary entries about Daniel are filled with a combination of excitement and insecurity. She spends hours analyzing their conversations, wondering whether he's genuinely interested in her or just playing games. This inner turmoil is something many can relate to: the uncertainty of whether a relationship will work out, and the self-doubt that creeps in when someone doesn't meet our expectations. Bridget's vulnerability is both relatable and humorous, as she describes her attempts to navigate the complexities of modern dating, all while desperately trying to maintain a sense of self-worth. At the same time, Bridget is also dealing with her friends. Her close-knit group of friends includes her best friend, Sharon, a fiercely loyal woman who, like Bridget, has her own set of challenges and personal struggles. Sharon is often a voice of reason, though she is just as prone to emotional ups and downs as Bridget is. Their friendship, filled with moments of humor and genuine concern, serves as a grounding force in Bridget's life, even when romantic situations become complicated. One of the most amusing aspects of Bridget's life is her ongoing battle with her weight. Her attempts to lose a few pounds become a recurring theme throughout the diary. Whether it's trying a new diet or failing miserably at exercise, Bridget's efforts to lose weight are filled with comical anecdotes and relatable frustrations. The pressure to be thin is something that many women face, and Bridget's lighthearted, yet honest, depiction of this struggle highlights the unrealistic expectations placed on women's bodies. She's constantly battling her cravings, and her efforts to stick to her diet are often thwarted by the indulgence of comfort food or a night out with friends. Her hilarious, exaggerated struggles with dieting become a part of her charm, as readers can't help but root for her despite her repeated failures. Amidst the romance and the diet struggles, Bridget also grapples with her career. She works at a publishing company, though it's clear that her job doesn't bring her the fulfillment she desires. She describes her workday with a mix of sarcasm and humor, detailing the mundane tasks she faces, her struggles with office politics, and her dissatisfaction with the work environment. Her job serves as a reminder that not all aspects of her life are idealized. She is, after all, a woman just trying to make a living and find her way. Her career is not the stuff of dreams, but it is another avenue where she is constantly trying to meet expectations, both her own and others. Bridget's life, as portrayed in the diary, is full of contradictions. She is simultaneously self-aware and self-critical, confident and insecure, romantic and cynical. These contradictions make her a fully realized character, and the diary format allows readers to experience her emotional ups and downs in real time. Bridget's story is one of personal growth, but it's also a reminder that the journey towards self-acceptance is rarely linear. There are moments of triumph and moments of failure, but through it all, Bridget's self-deprecating humor keeps her grounded, allowing her to reflect on her experiences without losing her sense of humor. Through her diary entries, we are introduced to a character who is deeply flawed, but also incredibly relatable. Bridget's struggles with love, body image, and career may seem ordinary, but it is through her unique perspective that we find humor, heart, and a sense of solidarity in her journey. The story that unfolds in Bridget Jones' diary is not just about finding love or losing weight. It's about learning to accept oneself, flaws and all, and realizing that the pursuit of happiness often comes with a few missteps along the way. As Bridget continues to navigate the ups and downs of her romantic life, the complications deepen with Daniel Cleaver. Her feelings for him have only grown stronger, and she becomes obsessed with decoding his behavior, trying to figure out whether he truly cares for her or is simply toying with her emotions. Her diary entries during this period reflect a mixture of excitement, confusion, and vulnerability. Bridget's heart flutters when Daniel shows her attention, but just as quickly, he withdraws or gives her mixed signals. This constant emotional roller coaster becomes the core of her internal conflict as she vacillates between hope and frustration. One moment, Daniel is charming and flirtatious, making Bridget feel like the center of his world. But the next moment, he disappears for days, leaving her to wonder if she's been imagining things. Bridget's thoughts spiral as she tries to interpret every word, every gesture, and every silence. She's torn between her desperate desire for affection and the nagging feeling that Daniel may not be as invested in the relationship as she is. Her diary entries during these moments are often filled with emotional outbursts and self-doubt, highlighting her tendency to overanalyze every interaction. She wonders whether she's being too needy or if Daniel is simply playing games, but she can't help but fall further into the trap of hoping for something more. Throughout this tumultuous period, Bridget's insecurities only seem to deepen. Her preoccupation with her weight and appearance continues to dominate her thoughts. She records her constant attempts at dieting, exercising, and trying to improve herself in the hopes that it will make her more desirable, not just to Daniel, but to the world in general. Her struggles with weight are a recurring theme in the diary, and while they provide moments of humor, they also reveal a deeper issue with self-worth. Bridget wants to be loved, but she believes that to be worthy of love, she must change herself to meet an ideal. Her attempts to lose weight and change her body are symbolic of her desire for validation and acceptance, not just from others, but from herself. The constant back and forth between self-criticism and fleeting moments of self-acceptance reflect the ongoing battle she faces to embrace who she is, flaws and all. Meanwhile, Bridget's career continues to be a source of frustration. She finds herself stuck in a job that she neither loves nor feels fulfilled by. She documents her days at the publishing company with a mix of sarcasm and resignation, often lamenting the monotony and lack of excitement in her work. Bridget's feelings of inadequacy extend beyond her love life. And wait, she also feels like she's failing in her professional life. She's not particularly ambitious or driven, and she often questions whether she's doing enough with her life. The job, which once seemed like a means to an end, becomes another area where Bridget feels like she's not measuring up. Her attempts to improve her situation are met with frustration, and she often turns to her diary for a sense of solace, trying to rationalize her lack of progress. Yet, despite the struggles and disappointments, there are moments where Bridget experiences brief glimpses of hope. One of the more poignant aspects of the diary is Bridget's self-reflection. Though she is often harsh on herself, she recognizes that these challenges are part of her journey. She doesn't always have the answers, but she's constantly learning from her experiences. Her vulnerability, paired with her self-deprecating humor, makes her journey of self-discovery feel authentic and grounded. She's not a superhero. She's just a woman trying her best to navigate a complicated life, and the diary acts as both a confessional and a sounding board for her frustrations. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, Bridget's circle of friends becomes an anchor. Her friendship with Sharon, in particular, is one of the most significant sources of support. Sharon, with her own quirks and imperfections, serves as a sounding board for Bridget's woes, offering advice and perspective when Bridget's self-doubt takes over. Their friendship is a constant reminder that even though Bridget feels isolated at times, she is not alone. Her friends provide her with a sense of belonging and a much-needed distraction from the turbulence in her personal life. They help her laugh at the absurdity of her situation, and through their camaraderie, Bridget finds solace. Bridget's family, however, continues to add another layer of complexity to her life. Her mother's well-meaning attempts to encourage Bridget to find a partner only add to her frustration. Bridget's mother is constantly reminding her that she's not getting any younger and that it's time to settle down. These comments, often made in a casual, offhand manner, intensify Bridget's insecurities. She feels the weight of her family's expectations, and it's clear that they see her as a bit of a work in progress. Though her mother loves her deeply, the pressure to meet these expectations, whether it's getting married, losing weight, or having a successful career, feels suffocating to Bridget. The tension between her desire for independence and the societal pressure to conform is one of the most poignant aspects of her emotional journey. Amidst the constant pressure and self-criticism, there are moments when Bridget finds joy and comfort in the simplest of things. She takes solace in her friendships, her occasional moments of indulgence, like a glass of wine or a chocolate bar, and the small victories that come with embracing her imperfect self. Even though she continues to be caught in the whirlwind of her romantic and personal struggles, there's a quiet resilience in Bridget's character. She's determined to keep moving forward, even if it means stumbling along the way. The emotional push and pull of Bridget's romantic life, weight struggles, and career challenges give the diary an authentic and relatable tone. The humor that infuses Bridget's entries makes the difficult moments feel more bearable, while also highlighting the internal conflict that many women face in their daily lives. Bridget's life is far from perfect, but through her candid writing, we see a woman who is learning to accept her flaws and work through her challenges, all while maintaining a sense of humor and self-awareness. These contradictions between desire and reality, hope and disappointment, are what make Bridget Jones a character who feels so real and relatable to readers. Through every setback, every emotional misstep, and every fleeting moment of hope, Bridget's story is a journey of growth. She may not have it all figured out yet, but she's taking small steps toward becoming the woman she wants to be. And that, in itself, is an achievement worth celebrating. As Bridget continues to grapple with the emotional ups and downs of her life, her romantic entanglement with Daniel Cleaver becomes even more complicated. The on-again, off-again nature of their relationship starts to take its toll on her. Every time they have a meaningful conversation or a passionate moment, Bridget's hope surges. She begins to imagine a future with him, one where they share a life together, and she feels that maybe, just maybe, she's found something that could finally stick. Yet, time and time again, Daniel's actions contradict his words, leaving Bridget questioning whether she's simply a fleeting interest to him or if he genuinely cares for her. She finds herself caught in the emotional trap of wanting him to be the person she believes he can be, rather than accepting him for who he is. Despite the confusion, Bridget remains somewhat hopeful, even as the evidence piles up that Daniel may not be as invested as she is. She feels like she's chasing a dream, a perfect version of him that may never come to fruition. Her friends, who have become her emotional support system throughout this tumultuous time, offer advice and perspective, but their words often fall on deaf ears. Bridget's internal dialogue becomes increasingly frantic as she attempts to dissect every interaction, every conversation, and every missed phone call. She can't help but question whether her feelings for him are truly reciprocated, or if she's just caught in the allure of his attention. The self-doubt deepens, and Bridget finds herself slipping into moments of insecurity that seem to overshadow her otherwise confident persona. As her romantic confusion escalates, Bridget tries to take control of other areas of her life, most notably her physical appearance. Her ongoing battle with her weight and body image continues to dominate her thoughts. She fluctuates between obsessing over calorie counts, fitting into smaller sizes, and confronting her insecurities head-on. Her dieting efforts become more extreme, and she measures her progress, or lack thereof, by the numbers on the scale. The diary entries during this period are filled with humor and self-deprecation. Yet underneath the playful tone, there's a palpable sadness. Bridget's self-worth continues to be tied to her appearance, and as she fails to meet the standards she's set for herself, the frustration becomes more pronounced. There's a constant battle between the desire to be loved and accepted as she is, and the pressure to conform to a cultural ideal of beauty that often feels unattainable. In the midst of her weight struggles, Bridget also reflects on her career. Despite her humorous observations about her job, it's clear that she's dissatisfied. Her position at the publishing company feels stagnant, and she feels unappreciated and underutilized. The lack of passion for her work leaves Bridget feeling unfulfilled, and she starts to question whether she's wasting her potential. However, instead of taking proactive steps to make a change, she continues to drift through her daily routine, feeling stuck in a job that offers little excitement or meaning. Bridget's internal dialogue about her career often mirrors her feelings about her love life. She's waiting for something to change, but she doesn't know how to initiate that change. Bridget's social life, while supportive in many ways, also brings moments of frustration. Her friends, though loyal and loving, sometimes have their own lives to lead, and Bridget finds herself feeling isolated and alone in her struggles. She feels like she's constantly playing catch-up, watching as others seem to have their lives more together than she does. Her sense of being left behind only intensifies as she looks around at her friends' relationships and successes. She wishes she could have it all figured out, like they seem to have, but instead, she feels like she's stumbling through life with no clear direction. The pressure to keep up with the expectations of her peers weighs heavily on her, and she begins to feel as though she's the only one still searching for answers. Her family, particularly her mother, continues to play a role in adding to Bridget's stress. Bridget's mom remains a well-meaning but persistent source of anxiety. Her mother's constant questions about when Bridget will settle down or find a partner serve as a reminder of what Bridget perceives as her own shortcomings. The gentle but firm nudges to get on with it only make Bridget more aware of the societal pressure she faces. She wants to make her mother proud, but at the same time, she resents the implication that her value is measured by her relationship status or her ability to conform to traditional roles. These tensions between Bridget's desire for independence and her mother's expectations create a backdrop of inner conflict that she can't seem to escape. Amidst all of this, Bridget's humorous, often self-deprecating nature remains a defining feature of her diary entries. She finds herself in a constant cycle of optimism, followed by disappointment. Yet she continues to write in her diary with an unflinching honesty. The humor in her entries serves as a coping mechanism, a way to navigate the difficult and often painful realities of her life. Even when she's at her lowest, Bridget's ability to laugh at herself provides a much-needed sense of relief. It's this combination of vulnerability and humor that makes her character so endearing. The audience sees her flaws and her struggles, but they also see her perseverance and her resilience. Despite the emotional roller coaster she's on, Bridget doesn't give up on herself. Her humor and determination shine through, even when it feels like life is pushing her to the edge. In the midst of all her confusion and self-doubt, Bridget begins to see glimpses of personal growth. Though she still longs for the approval of others, particularly Daniel, she begins to recognize that her value isn't defined by her relationships or her appearance. She starts to find small moments of clarity, like when she acknowledges that her career doesn't fulfill her in the way she hoped it would. These realizations, though minor, mark the beginning of Bridget's journey towards self-acceptance. The story isn't just about her romantic entanglements or her weight struggles. It's also about her learning to embrace her imperfections and take responsibility for her happiness. In the midst of all the noise, Bridget starts to prioritize herself, even if it's just in small, incremental ways. It's a slow process, but there's a quiet strength in her resilience. Even though she's still caught in the whirlwind of emotions, insecurities, and societal pressures, there's a sense that Bridget is learning how to navigate her world on her own terms. And while she may not have all the answers yet, she's beginning to understand that the journey is just as important as the destination. As Bridget's tumultuous relationship with Daniel continues to unfold, her emotional world grows even more complicated. Despite her earlier attempts to confront her feelings of insecurity, she still finds herself wrapped in the confusion that is Daniel Cleaver. After yet another moment of passion, Bridget hopes for clarity, but instead, she is met with silence. Daniel's mixed signals become even more difficult for her to interpret. One moment, he's charming and affectionate, and the next, he's distant and elusive, leaving Bridget constantly questioning whether he is genuinely interested in her or simply enjoying the chase. Every phone call, every text message, every interaction with him feels like a puzzle, and Bridget begins to wonder if she's losing herself in a relationship that may never meet her expectations. The more she pines for Daniel, the more Bridget realizes that her self-worth is increasingly tied to his affections. Her diary entries are filled with fluctuating moods. One minute, she's riding high on the joy of a text from him, and the next, she's spiraling into self-doubt when he doesn't immediately respond. Her obsession with Daniel grows stronger, and she starts to become more critical of herself. When he doesn't act in the way she hopes, she takes it as a personal failure, as though it's a reflection of something lacking within her. This cyclical pattern of hope, followed by disappointment, begins to wear her down. But Bridget, ever the optimist, refuses to let go completely. She's willing to forgive him for his faults, convinced that the potential for something more exists if she just waits long enough. At the same time, Bridget's friends continue to be a source of support, even if they don't always understand her choices. They're frustrated with the way Daniel treats her, urging her to move on and find someone who truly values her. However, Bridget brushes off their concerns, unwilling to let go of the idea that things will get better. Her attachment to Daniel has become a crutch, a way for her to avoid confronting her own insecurities and fears. She's caught in the narrative she's constructed around him, believing that he's the key to her happiness, even if her friends can see the cracks in that story. As much as they want to help, there's only so much advice they can offer before they realize that Bridget has to be the one to make the change. Meanwhile, Bridget's work life continues to feel like an ongoing struggle. Her job at the publishing house remains a source of frustration. She feels underappreciated, and her days are filled with monotonous tasks that seem to go unnoticed. The lack of fulfillment in her career only intensifies her emotional turmoil. She often finds herself daydreaming about something more meaningful, something that would bring her a sense of purpose and satisfaction. But despite her dissatisfaction, Bridget doesn't take any real steps to change her circumstances. Instead, she numbs herself with distractions, whether it's obsessing over Daniel's behavior or losing herself in her endless pursuit of dieting. Work, once again, becomes just another backdrop to her emotional drama, one where she's stuck in a loop of frustration without any clear resolution in sight. Her weight and body image issues remain a constant battle. Bridget is obsessed with losing weight, convinced that if she can achieve the perfect body, everything else in her life will fall into place. She spends hours obsessing over calorie counts, weighing herself obsessively, and scrutinizing every meal she eats. The numbers on the scale have come to represent more than just her physical appearance. They've become a gauge for her worth. If the scale doesn't show the results she wants, she feels like a failure, and her self-esteem plummets. However, when she does manage to lose a few pounds, the fleeting joy quickly gives way to the realization that her self-worth is still tied to her appearance. It's an exhausting cycle, and Bridget feels like she's chasing an unattainable ideal. Despite her ongoing struggles with her body image, Bridget has moments of clarity where she begins to question the unrealistic beauty standards she's trying to meet. She knows that her obsession with dieting is unhealthy, but the pressure to conform to societal expectations of beauty is overwhelming. In these moments, she writes with vulnerability about her internal conflict, expressing a desire to embrace herself as she is, flaws and all. She yearns to be free from the constant self-criticism that has defined so much of her life, but she's unsure how to get there. These reflections add an emotional depth to the diary, showing that, beneath the humor and sarcasm, lies a woman who is struggling to find peace with herself. One of the most poignant aspects of Bridget's journey is her fluctuating sense of self-worth. At her core, she desires love, acceptance, and validation. But she's been conditioned to believe that these things come only when she meets certain standards, whether it's finding the right man, losing weight, or achieving career success. However, as the narrative unfolds, Bridget begins to realize that her happiness cannot solely be dependent on external factors. There are moments when she catches herself in the act of self-sabotage, when she recognizes the ways in which she's been compromising her own needs in order to fit into someone else's mold. These moments of self-awareness, though brief, suggest that Bridget is beginning to understand the importance of valuing herself first. Despite her internal struggle, Bridget's wit and humor continue to shine through. Even when she's feeling down, she uses her humor as a way to cope with the complexities of her life. The sharp, self-deprecating tone of her diary entries provides a sense of levity in the midst of her emotional chaos. She's able to laugh at herself, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. It's this combination of humor and vulnerability that makes Bridget's character so relatable. Her imperfections are on full display, and she doesn't try to hide them. Instead, she embraces them, allowing her readers, or in this case, her viewers, to see the messy, real side of her that makes her so endearing. Her relationship with her mother continues to add to the emotional weight she carries. Bridget's mother is well-meaning, but continues to apply pressure to her daughter to settle down and meet traditional expectations. The unspoken tension between them grows as Bridget's independence clashes with her mother's hopes for her future. Bridget wants to make her mother proud, but she also wants to live life on her own terms, free from the societal expectations that seem to define her worth. This conflict adds another layer of complexity to Bridget's emotional landscape, as she tries to balance her desire for independence with the need to meet her family's expectations. As Bridget navigates these challenges, she begins to understand the need to prioritize herself, something she's long neglected in favor of pleasing others. The process is slow, and there are setbacks along the way, but there's a quiet strength building within her. It's not about finding perfection, it's about finding balance and learning to accept herself, flaws and all. Though she still longs for the approval and validation of others, she starts to see that her worth doesn't depend on meeting other people's standards. Instead, it comes from within. This realization marks the beginning of a shift in Bridget's mindset, one that will continue to unfold as she faces more of life's challenges head-on. Bridget's world seems to be spinning even more out of control as the complexities of her relationships and personal life continue to weigh heavily on her. The back and forth dynamic with Daniel Cleaver takes its toll. Her emotional investment in him remains deep, despite the fact that his behavior remains erratic. She can't help but hope that he will change, that he will eventually see her for who she is and offer the stability and commitment she craves. But, as always, Daniel's affections are fleeting, and Bridget is left chasing after something that may never come to fruition. This constant tug of war between hope and despair becomes a defining feature of her emotional landscape. While she continues to be preoccupied with Daniel, Bridget's attempts at self-improvement are also ongoing. She spends time obsessing over her weight and her appearance, convinced that losing a few pounds will solve all her problems. Her daily rituals are filled with thoughts of dieting, calorie counting, and exercise. She punishes herself when she eats something she considers a bad choice, and her self-esteem fluctuates dramatically based on the numbers on the scale. When she loses weight, she feels a brief sense of pride, but it never lasts long. The momentary triumph gives way to the realization that her happiness is still elusive, and the next day's struggles feel just as daunting as the ones before. Despite her preoccupation with her outward appearance, Bridget begins to have some realizations about the pressures she's placing on herself. In her diary, she starts to express a more honest reflection on the beauty standards that she's been trying so hard to conform to. For the first time, she admits that her constant self-criticism isn't doing her any good. It's only serving to make her feel worse. But even though she recognizes the flaws in her thinking, breaking free from this toxic mindset proves to be much more difficult than she anticipates. It's one thing to intellectually acknowledge the need for change. It's another thing entirely to embrace that change in practice. Bridget's emotional struggles don't disappear overnight, but she's beginning to take the first steps toward finding a healthier balance. As her relationship with Daniel continues to falter, Bridget's interactions with other men become more significant. She meets a man named Mark Darcy, someone she initially dismisses as too dull and serious for her taste. Mark is a longtime family acquaintance, but he's always seemed a little outside of Bridget's radar. However, as Bridget finds herself increasingly disillusioned with Daniel, she starts to see Mark in a different light. There's something about his straightforward manner and his complete lack of pretense that intrigues her. He doesn't play games, and there's no ambiguity about his intentions. For the first time in a long while, Bridget is faced with someone who seems genuinely interested in her for who she is, not for how she looks or how well she fits into society's expectations. Although Bridget initially writes off Mark's advances, dismissing him as too boring for her, there's a subtle shift in her perception. She begins to realize that perhaps there's more to him than meets the eye. While she's been preoccupied with trying to win Daniel's affection, she begins to see that Mark offers something Daniel never has: stability, sincerity, and a grounded nature that appeals to Bridget in a way she hadn't anticipated. Even though she's still very much caught up in her insecurities and her desire for external validation, Bridget's interactions with Mark help her to see a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect and honesty, rather than the constant emotional roller coaster she's endured with Daniel. As she spends more time with Mark, Bridget's feelings start to shift, and the dynamics between them begin to change. At first, their conversations are awkward, and Bridget struggles to open up to him fully. She still harbors reservations about being vulnerable and fears that Mark might not be the kind of man she can truly connect with. But as they talk more, she starts to notice how different he is from the other men she's encountered. Mark's steady presence, his dry sense of humor, and his ability to take her seriously are qualities that gradually chip away at her defenses. Bridget begins to realize that, unlike Daniel, Mark doesn't make her feel like she has to be anything other than herself. For once, she doesn't feel the pressure to change for someone else's approval. Despite the growing connection with Mark, Bridget's emotional turmoil isn't over. Her relationship with Daniel continues to linger in her mind, even as she tries to push it aside. The possibility of a future with Mark is still clouded by her lingering attachment to Daniel, and she's torn between two very different types of men. While Daniel represents the excitement and the passion of an unpredictable, flawed relationship, Mark represents the stability and sincerity that Bridget has longed for, but never quite realized she needed. The tension between these two men forces Bridget to confront some difficult truths about herself, her self-worth, and what she really wants out of a relationship. The struggle to let go of Daniel and embrace the potential with Mark becomes one of the central conflicts in Bridget's emotional journey. It's not just about the men themselves. It's about Bridget's own sense of identity. She has spent so much time seeking validation from external sources, whether it's Daniel's affection or society's beauty standards, that she has neglected her own internal sense of self-worth. As Bridget spends more time with Mark, she begins to see that true happiness and fulfillment don't come from being validated by someone else. Instead, they come from accepting herself as she is, without the need for constant approval from others. This realization doesn't come easily, and it's not without its challenges, but it marks a significant shift in Bridget's thinking. Her internal conflict intensifies as she juggles her growing feelings for Mark with her lingering obsession over Daniel. She knows deep down that Daniel is not the right man for her, but the allure of his attention and the emotional highs and lows they've shared make it difficult for her to completely let go. The contrast between the two men forces Bridget to question what she truly values in a relationship, whether it's the excitement of passion and unpredictability, or the quiet comfort of genuine connection and trust. This internal tug of war becomes the crux of her emotional growth. And Bridget slowly begins to learn that letting go of the past and embracing the possibility of a future with Mark may be the key to finding true happiness. Bridget's internal struggle grows more complicated as she tries to balance her budding connection with Mark and the lingering pull of her toxic relationship with Daniel. Despite her growing awareness that Daniel is not the right man for her, she still cannot quite let him go. This emotional tug of war intensifies, pulling Bridget in two directions as she continues to confront her desires, fears, and insecurities. Mark, with his steady and unpretentious demeanor, offers a sense of comfort and reliability that she's never experienced before. Yet she finds herself constantly comparing him to the excitement and chaos of Daniel's unpredictable behavior. Bridget is caught between the two men, torn between the stability that Mark offers and the emotional highs and lows of Daniel's attention. This emotional turmoil is compounded by Bridget's growing sense of self-doubt. Despite her best efforts to improve her life, whether through dieting, exercising, or focusing on her career, she feels as though she is still falling short in every area. The pressure to be perfect, to fit into societal expectations of beauty and success, weighs heavily on her. Her moments of self-reflection become more frequent, but they don't always lead to the clarity she craves. There are times when she feels entirely out of control, questioning her value and her ability to make the right choices. Bridget's diary entries, as always, are filled with a mixture of humor and self-deprecation. as she tries to navigate the complexities of her personal life while also coming to terms with the fact that she can't control everything. Her vulnerability is laid bare, and readers see the depth of her emotional struggle, one that's all too familiar, yet still incredibly relatable. Her insecurities are not only confined to her romantic relationships, but extend to her career and social life as well. Bridget works as a television producer, a job that she enjoys, but also finds incredibly stressful. She struggles with the expectations placed on her in the workplace, constantly feeling like she's not living up to the high standards she sets for herself. Her colleagues, especially her boss, are often dismissive of her ideas, and this lack of recognition makes her question her professional worth. The challenges she faces at work become a reflection of the larger theme in her life, the struggle for validation. Whether it's from men, her career, or society in general, Bridget feels constantly overlooked and undervalued. This feeling of inadequacy colors her interactions with others and contributes to her ongoing dissatisfaction. Yet, even in the face of these struggles, there are moments where Bridget's humor shines through, and she manages to maintain a sense of resilience, even if it's tinged with self-doubt. As Bridget grapples with her internal conflicts, she becomes more aware of how her self-esteem and self-worth are tied to external factors. Whether it's her weight, her career, or her relationships, she is constantly measuring her value against these fleeting markers of success. Her obsession with perfection reaches its peak when she faces yet another setback with her relationship with Daniel. Despite her best efforts, Daniel's behavior continues to be inconsistent. His attention flits from one woman to another, and Bridget is once again left in a state of emotional limbo, unsure of where she stands. She is heartbroken, but this time, the pain is accompanied by a sense of clarity. Deep down, she knows that her emotional attachment to Daniel has been unhealthy. She realizes that, despite the years of trying to win his affection, she cannot continue to invest in a relationship that constantly makes her feel inadequate. It is during this time of emotional upheaval that Bridget begins to shift her focus inward. For the first time, she starts to question her reliance on external validation. She begins to acknowledge that her happiness cannot be contingent on the actions or opinions of others. It's a painful realization, but it marks the beginning of a slow, gradual shift in her mindset. Bridget begins to let go of the notion that she needs to be perfect to be loved or successful. Her efforts to lose weight, though still present, take a back seat as she starts to prioritize her mental and emotional well-being. This is a pivotal moment for Bridget, as she begins to understand that true happiness and contentment can only come from within. While this shift is not immediate or easy, it becomes clear that Bridget is moving toward a more authentic and self-compassionate way of living. Amidst this period of self-discovery, Bridget's relationship with Mark begins to deepen. Unlike Daniel, Mark does not make her feel inadequate or unworthy. He sees her for who she is, flaws and all, and accepts her without the need for her to change. There is something reassuring about his steady, grounded presence. He never pressures her to conform to some ideal version of herself. Instead, he encourages her to be true to herself. Bridget finds this refreshing, and the connection between them grows stronger. She begins to trust Mark in a way she never trusted Daniel. Mark's consistent support and his genuine affection for her are stark contrasts to the emotional turbulence she experienced with Daniel. Slowly, Bridget starts to open up more to him, revealing sides of herself that she had kept hidden for fear of being judged. However, just as Bridget begins to embrace the possibility of a future with Mark, Daniel resurfaces in her life, pulling her back into the old, familiar pattern of uncertainty and longing. Daniel's reappearance stirs up feelings that Bridget had thought she had buried. She finds herself questioning whether she made the right decision in choosing Mark over Daniel, unsure of whether she is truly ready to let go of the past. This internal conflict resurfaces as she tries to make sense of her emotions. Mark, ever patient and understanding, continues to be there for her. But Bridget is still haunted by the emotional residue of her past relationship with Daniel. This period of indecision forces Bridget to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. She realizes that, even though she is deeply invested in Mark and values the relationship they are building, she still carries the baggage of her past with her. Her attachment to Daniel is not entirely gone, and it becomes clear that the process of letting go will take time. But Bridget also knows that in order to fully move forward, she must break free from the cycle of self-doubt and emotional turmoil that has held her captive for so long. It is a long and difficult road, but the journey towards self-acceptance and emotional freedom is one that Bridget is finally beginning to embark on. As Bridget begins to work through her feelings, the path to clarity becomes more and more complicated. She remains in a state of emotional conflict, deeply entangled in her own insecurities and the conflicting relationships with both Mark and Daniel. The stakes feel higher than ever as her romantic life continues to be a source of constant turmoil. Bridget's feelings for Mark are real. She can feel her heart leaning toward him in ways that are different from her past relationships. But the lingering attachment to Daniel continues to cloud her judgment. Daniel, with his charm and unpredictability, stirs a part of Bridget that she feels she cannot easily suppress. She finds herself questioning whether the safety and reliability of Mark are enough to replace the excitement and intensity she felt with Daniel. The juxtaposition of these two men, Mark's unwavering calm versus Daniel's erratic energy, forces Bridget to face some of her own fears. Mark represents everything she has been seeking: stability, respect, and a deep sense of understanding. But Daniel represents the past, the excitement, the feelings of inadequacy that Bridget at times craves. Her internal dialogue becomes a constant back and forth between these two contrasting emotions. She realizes that part of her is drawn to Daniel because he makes her feel something, even if that feeling is uncertainty or anxiety. In contrast, Mark makes her feel at peace, but it's not the same kind of rush. The contrast between these two relationships begins to force Bridget into a deeper reflection of what she truly wants from love and life in general. Her doubts and internal struggles are not only tied to her romantic relationships, but also to her sense of self. Despite her moments of self-realization and growth, Bridget still harbors the feeling that she is not enough, whether it's for Mark or for herself. This lingering sense of inadequacy is something Bridget has carried with her for years, stemming from societal pressures, her parents' expectations, and her own judgmental view of herself. She constantly measures her self-worth by the men in her life, her weight, and her career. It's a cycle of seeking external validation, which, even when fulfilled, never seems to satisfy her. Bridget feels the pull of perfectionism in almost every aspect of her life. She worries about her weight, her career, her relationships, and the way she presents herself to others. Despite trying to live authentically, there is still a fear that she is not living up to the image of who she should be. At work, Bridget finds herself continuing to struggle with the expectations that her colleagues and boss place on her. The pressures at work feel just as daunting as the ones she faces in her personal life. She wants to succeed, but the challenges she faces at the office make her feel like she is not living up to her potential. Even in her moments of success, she questions whether she truly deserves it. Her career is not where she envisioned it would be, and it seems as though no matter how hard she works, the recognition she seeks eludes her. This frustration spills over into her personal life, where she wonders whether any of her accomplishments, whether in her career or relationships, are enough to make her feel whole. Bridget's emotional struggles are amplified by the moments of contrast with Mark. As Bridget continues to try to make sense of her feelings, she realizes that Mark is a person who doesn't demand her to be someone else. He sees her, imperfections and all, and accepts her in a way that is both reassuring and intimidating. It's comforting to know that she can be her true self with him, but at the same time, the lack of drama, of excitement, leaves her feeling unsure. For years, Bridget has been accustomed to the chaotic, high-stakes emotions that come with being in relationships with people like Daniel, where the ups and downs were an inescapable part of the experience. Now, with Mark, she finds herself in uncharted territory, a relationship that, while filled with warmth and care, is not marked by the same level of intensity. Bridget has to confront the idea that sometimes true love doesn't come with constant fireworks. It can be quieter, more consistent, and even more enduring. During this period, Bridget finds solace in the company of her friends, whose perspectives offer both comfort and sharp insight. Her friends, despite their own quirks and flaws, offer Bridget a sense of camaraderie that she is grateful for. They understand her, and more importantly, they love her for who she is, without any need for her to change. Their support helps to ground Bridget as she continues to navigate her feelings for both Mark and Daniel. Her conversations with her friends provide the emotional support she desperately needs. And these exchanges lead to some of her most profound moments of self-awareness. Despite her friends' advice and the growing realization that Mark is a good and steady person who could make her truly happy, Bridget still finds herself tempted by the past, by the memories of her chaotic, passionate relationship with Daniel. The pull of the familiar is strong, and Bridget wonders whether she's merely afraid to settle into something real with Mark because it doesn't offer the same highs and lows that she's grown accustomed to. The fear of losing the excitement that Daniel brings clouds her ability to fully embrace the stability that Mark offers. But Bridget knows that this is a choice she must make, one that will ultimately decide the direction of her future. In moments of quiet reflection, Bridget understands that her happiness cannot rely on the external circumstances of her life. It must come from within. This realization is painful, as it challenges her to let go of the idea that her worth is tied to her romantic relationships, career, or appearance. Bridget begins to take small steps toward truly embracing herself, imperfections and all. She allows herself to focus less on perfection and more on authenticity. Slowly, Her fears begin to fade as she starts to recognize that the love she needs most is the love she gives to herself. Bridget's journey of self-discovery becomes even more complicated as she faces a series of emotional setbacks and realizations. The path forward is not as simple as choosing between two men. The tug of war within herself intensifies as she wrestles with her own sense of self-worth, compounded by the pressure she feels from the expectations of others. She finds herself increasingly aware of the gap between who she is and who she believes she should be, and it becomes difficult for her to step out from under the shadow of her own insecurities. As Bridget navigates the swirling emotions of her love life, she begins to see a different side of herself, a version that is no longer content with simply existing, but is yearning for something more meaningful. The realization is painful, as it forces her to confront the reality that her love life, her career, and her sense of identity are all deeply intertwined. She has allowed herself to be defined by her relationships with men, by her job, and by the way the world perceives her. But now, she finds that these external factors are no longer enough. Bridget is no longer interested in merely being someone's girlfriend or fitting into the mold that others have set for her. She wants to carve out her own space, to define herself on her terms. This period of deep reflection forces Bridget to take a step back from both Daniel and Mark. The emotional pressure of choosing between them becomes too much, and she decides that she needs time away from the chaos of romantic entanglements to focus on herself. She's tired of constantly questioning her worth and feeling inadequate. Bridget's decision to step away is not an easy one, but it's one that marks a turning point in her life. It's the first time that she makes a choice based on her own needs and desires, rather than the wants of others. Her decision is met with mixed feelings. Her friends, as always, rally behind her, offering their support and encouragement. They understand her need for space and respect her decision. However, her family, particularly her mother, still has her own vision of what Bridget's life should look like, which doesn't always align with Bridget's growing sense of independence. Her mother's well-meaning, but often overbearing advice continues to reflect the outdated expectations of a woman's role in society. For Bridget, this becomes another source of tension. She wants to break free from the mold that her family and society have created for her. She wants to find happiness on her own terms without needing the approval of others to feel validated. As Bridget distances herself from her romantic dilemmas, she starts to take up new activities and reignites her passions that have been buried under the weight of self-doubt for far too long. She begins to spend more time on her career, taking on new challenges at work and pushing herself to grow professionally. This period of self-focus becomes empowering as she rediscovers her ability to achieve things on her own. It's a sense of accomplishment that she has not felt in years, and it gives her a new sense of confidence. She realizes that she is capable of so much more than she ever gave herself credit for. The fulfillment she begins to experience at work gives her the emotional distance she needs to finally see her personal life from a new perspective. Through this period of growth, Bridget also begins to form a deeper, more meaningful connection with herself. No longer obsessed with the idea of perfection, she allows herself to embrace her flaws and accept that they are part of who she is. She becomes more comfortable in her own skin, no longer constantly measuring herself against unrealistic standards. She recognizes that happiness doesn't come from fitting into a mold or living up to others' expectations, but from being authentic and true to herself. The validation she once sought from external sources begins to feel less important. Bridget understands that her worth is inherent and doesn't need to be earned or proven. This self-realization is a powerful moment for Bridget, as she finally sheds the layers of insecurity that have held her back. She no longer feels like she has to be someone else to be loved or admired. She can simply be herself, quirks, mistakes, and all. As she embraces her true self, she finds a sense of freedom that she has long been craving. This newfound sense of independence doesn't mean she doesn't still care about love and relationships. It simply means she is no longer defined by them. She recognizes that the right relationship will come when she is ready, but it will be built on a foundation of self-love and self-respect, rather than on the need to be saved or validated by another person. In the midst of this growth, Bridget also starts to see her relationships with both Daniel and Mark in a different light. She realizes that the drama and intensity of her relationship with Daniel were not a reflection of true love, but rather a result of her own fears and insecurities. The emotional highs and lows she experienced with him were exciting, but they were ultimately unhealthy and unsustainable. In contrast, her relationship with Mark has always been steady and supportive. While it may lack the initial spark she felt with Daniel, it offers a deeper, more meaningful connection. As Bridget begins to embrace her own worth, she starts to see that Mark's steady affection and understanding might be exactly what she needs to build a future with someone who truly values her for who she is. Despite her growing awareness of her own self-worth, Bridget still grapples with the lingering uncertainties of her romantic life. She questions whether she is truly ready to let go of her past with Daniel, whether she can fully embrace the steadiness that Mark offers. But she recognizes that these are the kinds of questions that only time and experience can answer. For now, she is content to focus on herself, her career, and her emotional growth. The relationships that once seemed so urgent and consuming now feel like they are taking a backseat to the journey of self-discovery that Bridget is on. This shift in perspective allows her to move forward with a clearer sense of direction, no longer defined by the whims and judgments of others, but by her own choices. As Bridget steps into this new phase of her life, she realizes that the journey of self-love and acceptance is ongoing. It's not something that happens overnight or in one dramatic moment of clarity. It's a process, a series of small steps toward becoming the person she wants to be. And with each step, Bridget grows stronger, more confident, and more at peace with who she is. As Bridget continues to embrace her newfound sense of independence and self-awareness, she finds that the emotional turbulence that once consumed her begins to settle. The fog of insecurity that clouded her perspective begins to lift, and she is finally able to see her life more clearly. The pressure to conform to society's ideals of beauty, success, and romantic perfection seems less significant. Bridget has grown into someone who no longer feels the need to measure her worth against others' standards. Instead, she starts to understand that her value is intrinsic, something that cannot be measured by the number of dates she goes on, her weight, or how well she fits into societal expectations. This shift in mindset doesn't come without its challenges, though. As Bridget becomes more attuned to her own desires and needs, she faces the inevitable doubts and fears that come with growing up. While she has made great strides in her emotional and professional life, the question still remains, what about love? Is she really ready to let go of the idea of a perfect romance? Or is she simply settling for a relationship out of convenience? Her connection with Mark, despite its stability, still seems to lack the intensity that Bridget once craved. There are moments of tenderness, sure, but there are also moments of hesitation, where Bridget wonders whether the connection is truly enough for her. She finds herself questioning whether she is settling for something that doesn't completely fulfill her, and whether this calm and steady love is the best choice for her at this stage in her life. It's a conflict that has plagued her throughout the book, the tension between the need for stability and the desire for excitement. Bridget's introspection begins to create a rift in her relationship with Mark. While Mark is a steady presence in her life, Bridget cannot ignore the doubts that continue to simmer beneath the surface. She questions whether her longing for the passion and drama of her past relationships has clouded her judgment of what true love should feel like. In the past, she was drawn to the thrill of chaos, believing it to be the ultimate sign of passion. But as she matures, she starts to realize that true love doesn't need to be chaotic to be meaningful. Perhaps the kind of love Mark offers is exactly what she needs. But Bridget's uncertainty makes it difficult for her to fully accept that idea. The relationship with Daniel, in contrast, has become a distant memory. What once seemed like a whirlwind romance, full of fireworks and excitement, has, in retrospect, lost its allure. Bridget's own growth and self-reflection have led her to see Daniel for who he truly is, someone who is charming, but ultimately unreliable. The thrilling moments they shared seem shallow now, overshadowed by the emotional messiness he left behind. While Bridget once believed that Daniel was her chance at a perfect romance, she now realizes that their relationship was more about her need for validation than about truly loving each other. In a particularly telling moment, Bridget runs into Daniel unexpectedly at a party. The meeting is charged with awkwardness, and Bridget cannot help but feel that their past, once so important to her, now seems almost irrelevant. She has changed, and so has her perspective on their relationship. She recognizes that, for all his charm, Daniel was never the person she needed. He was someone who flattered her ego, but never supported her in the ways she needed. This encounter with Daniel acts as a final moment of closure for Bridget. She no longer yearns for the intensity he once provided. Instead, she sees the relationship for what it was, one that was rooted in her own insecurities, not in mutual love and respect. As Bridget continues to wrestle with her feelings for Mark, she also begins to realize that she no longer needs romantic love to validate her existence. Her relationship with herself is far more important than any external validation. This realization is liberating, but also a little daunting. She has spent so much time seeking validation from men and her family that it is now difficult for her to fully embrace the idea that she is enough on her own. The process of reorienting her self-worth away from romantic relationships is not instantaneous, and there are moments of doubt where she wonders if she is simply alone because she isn't enough. However, these thoughts become less frequent as she continues to gain strength from the new life she is building for herself. In her professional life, Bridget begins to find success in areas that once felt beyond her reach. She takes on new challenges at work with a renewed sense of confidence and assertiveness. Her career becomes an outlet for her creativity and determination, allowing her to thrive in ways she never thought possible. As she excels in her professional life, Bridget starts to recognize that success is not solely defined by a romantic partner or the approval of others. Her accomplishments, both big and small, are a reflection of her own growth and perseverance. Throughout this period of self-empowerment, Bridget's relationships with her friends and family also evolve. Her friendships, in particular, grow stronger as she shares her journey of personal growth with them. They have always been her support system, but now she is able to open up to them in a way that is more authentic and genuine. She is no longer afraid to show her vulnerabilities, and in doing so, she deepens her connections with the people who matter most to her. Bridget's relationship with her mother also undergoes a transformation. While her mother's expectations for Bridget's life still persist, Bridget learns to assert herself in a way that is both respectful and firm. She begins to realize that her mother's well-meaning but outdated ideas about relationships and success no longer need to dictate the course of her life. Bridget is able to assert her independence, carving out her own path without feeling guilty or ashamed of her choices. Despite the growing confidence in her personal and professional life, the question of love remains ever present. But Bridget's journey has taught her that love doesn't need to look a certain way to be real or meaningful. She no longer seeks a perfect love story, but one that is grounded in mutual respect, understanding, and support. As she learns to love herself first, she knows that she is capable of building a love that is based on her own terms, one that will add to her life, not complete it. As Bridget finally comes to terms with her own self-worth, she realizes that she doesn't need to make a choice between Daniel and Mark. What she truly needs is time and space to grow further, to continue exploring who she is without the pressure of being defined by her romantic relationships. The ultimate takeaway from her journey is that self-love, personal growth, and the ability to stand confidently in one's own life are the most important things she could ever seek. And when the time is right, the right love will come into her life, not as a solution to her problems, but as a beautiful addition to the fullness of her already rich and fulfilling existence. As Bridget begins to embrace her sense of self and her independence, she confronts the complexities of her romantic relationships head-on. For the first time, she truly begins to understand that happiness doesn't come from someone else's approval or from the idea of a perfect romance. It comes from accepting herself as she is, flaws, quirks, and all. Bridget's self-acceptance marks the culmination of her emotional journey throughout the story, and it is this moment of clarity that feels like the real turning point in her life. Her relationship with Mark, which once seemed filled with uncertainty and hesitation, starts to feel like a genuine partnership, albeit one that is not without its flaws. Bridget acknowledges the imperfections in their connection, but also begins to recognize that these imperfections are what make their relationship real and grounded. The romance is not fiery or dramatic, but it is steady and comforting. It is exactly what she needs at this point in her life. Mark is not the answer to all her problems, but he is someone who accepts her for who she is, without judgment or expectation. They complement each other in ways that Bridget never thought possible, and she finds herself feeling secure in their bond, something she had been yearning for, but was too afraid to fully commit to in the past. The realization that love doesn't have to be perfect in order to be meaningful gives Bridget the freedom to love without fear. She stops chasing after the idea of an ideal love story and starts to appreciate what she already has. Bridget's transformation is not about rejecting the idea of love, but about reshaping her understanding of it. It becomes about mutual respect, shared laughter, and the comforting presence of someone who understands her, even in her moments of imperfection. As she allows herself to be vulnerable and embrace the messy, real aspects of love, she finds that the connection with Mark deepens in ways she never thought possible. However, the journey is not without its final moments of self-discovery. As Bridget contemplates her life, she recognizes that the true key to lasting happiness lies in the balance between self-love and the love of others. She understands that she doesn't need to be fixed by anyone. She is already whole as she is. This marks a significant evolution in her character. No longer does she seek approval from the outside world, nor does she look to others to make her feel worthy. Instead, she becomes her own source of validation. This empowerment gives her the strength to build relationships that are healthy, supportive, and enriching, without relying on them to complete her. The final pages of the diary serve as a reminder of how far Bridget has come. Her journey of self-discovery and emotional growth is far from over, but she is no longer the insecure, self-deprecating woman who started this diary. She is someone who has learned to embrace both her strengths and weaknesses, understanding that these qualities are what make her unique. She is confident enough to pursue her dreams without fear of judgment, and is finally at peace with her own identity. Her relationship with Mark is not the fairy tale ending she once imagined, but it is real, full of promise, and built on a foundation of mutual understanding and love. Bridget's story, while deeply personal, is also universally relatable. Many readers see parts of themselves in her: the struggle to navigate societal pressures, the internal battle to feel worthy of love, and the longing to be accepted for who they truly are. Bridget's emotional growth speaks to the human experience of learning to love oneself before seeking love from others. The humor that runs throughout the book makes this profound journey both entertaining and deeply moving. Bridget's imperfections are not something to be ashamed of, but rather they are the very things that make her human, and they are the elements that make her story so endearing. Throughout the book, Bridget also learns to embrace the value of her friendships. Her bonds with her friends, particularly her close-knit group of women, become a source of strength for her. While romantic love plays an important role in her growth, it is her friendships that offer her support, wisdom, and encouragement along the way. These relationships remind Bridget that love comes in many forms, and it is often the platonic, unconditional love of friends and family that serves as the foundation for lasting happiness. The humor, laughter, and solidarity among her friends are what help her to regain her confidence and perspective, and they provide her with the strength to navigate the complexities of life. Her relationship with her mother also undergoes significant change. Initially, Bridget felt immense pressure to meet her mother's expectations, constantly striving to live up to an ideal that never seemed attainable. But by the end of her journey, she realizes that her worth is not defined by her mother's expectations or anyone else's. She learns to assert herself with love and respect, carving her own path without feeling guilty or inadequate. Bridget's journey is not just about romantic love, but also about learning to stand firm in her own identity and make choices that are right for her. As Bridget writes in her diary for the last time, she reflects on the lessons she has learned. While she acknowledges the trials and tribulations of the past, she no longer feels defined by them. Instead, she is empowered by the growth and self-discovery that have shaped her into the woman she is today. She is grateful for the lessons, the mistakes, and the people who have been part of her journey. And though she still faces uncertainty at times, Bridget is no longer afraid of the unknown. She knows that she is capable of handling whatever life throws her way, because she has learned to trust in herself and her ability to navigate the complexities of life. In the end, Bridget's story is one of transformation, not just in terms of her love life, but also in her personal growth. The emotional roller coaster she experiences throughout the book is not a tragic tale of heartbreak, but rather a triumph of self-love, self-acceptance, and the courage to face one's fears. Bridget may not have found a perfect love story, but she has found something far more valuable, the realization that she is enough, just as she is. Through her journey, Bridget learns that true happiness comes from within, and that the most important relationship one can have is the one with oneself. Bridget Jones' diary is a journey of self-discovery, humor, and growth. Through the pages of Bridget's hilarious and often relatable diary entries, readers are given an honest, raw look into the life of a woman trying to navigate the chaos of modern life, love, and expectations. While Bridget initially sets out on a quest to find the perfect man and lose weight, her story unfolds into a deeper, more profound exploration of what it truly means to love oneself. The humor and wit that define Bridget's character mask the more significant lessons embedded in her journey about embracing imperfections, letting go of unrealistic expectations, and accepting both the good and the bad that come with being human. Her relationship with herself evolves throughout the book, and by the end, it's clear that the most important love story is the one she has with herself. In doing so, Bridget learns that happiness does not lie in meeting society's standards or in the approval of others, but in finding peace with who she is and in nurturing meaningful relationships, both romantic and platonic. The book's charm lies in Bridget's relatability. She is not the perfect woman, and neither is her life or love story perfect. But it's this imperfection that makes her journey so impactful. Her self-deprecating humor, her embarrassing moments, and her vulnerability resonate with readers everywhere, offering them the comfort of knowing they are not alone in their struggles. Bridget Jones' diary speaks to the heart of the human experience, showing us that it's okay to fall short of perfection and to make mistakes along the way. Ultimately, Bridget's transformation is a testament to the power of self-acceptance. Her ability to navigate the challenges of love, work, and family without losing her sense of humor or her identity is what makes her such an enduring character. By the end of her story, Bridget is no longer defined by her flaws or by the expectations of others. She has come into her own, learning to accept and celebrate herself just as she is. This journey of personal growth, self-love, and accepting life's imperfections is what gives the story its timeless appeal, reminding readers that sometimes the greatest love story is the one you have with yourself.